April 1945, the sky over Okinawa burns. From the Japanese mainland, hundreds of aircraft are taking off, not to return. Their mission is simple: to crash their planes full of explosives directly into American ships. They are the Kamikaze, Japan's divine wind. And this is the story of Operation Kikusui, the largest suicide assault in human history. By early 1945, Japan was on the brink of defeat. American forces had captured Iwo Jima and now turned their eyes to Okinawa, the last barrier before the Japanese home islands. To Tokyo, Okinawa was the front line of survival. Losing it would mean opening the gates to invasion. But Japan's navy was shattered, its air force reduced to scattered remnants. What Japan still had, however, were pilots willing to die. In desperation, Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki of the 5th Air Fleet proposed a horrifying plan: mass suicide air raids to destroy the U.S. fleet off Okinawa and stall the invasion. The operation would be called Kikusui, meaning floating chrysanthemum, a symbol of death and sacrifice for the emperor. The concept wasn't new. Japan's first organized kamikaze missions began in the Philippines in late 1944, where volunteer pilots deliberately crashed into American carriers during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. The tactic had shocked the Allies, and it worked. In 1 week, kamikazes sank or damaged over 40 ships. For Japan, these attacks became the embodiment of self-sacrifice, the noble death. Young men, many barely trained, were told they could save their homeland by dying for the emperor. They wrote farewell letters, drank ceremonial sake, tied white headbands around their foreheads, and painted the rising sun on their aircraft. Then they took off, one last time. By Okinawa, the kamikaze had become an organized strategy of war. Okinawa was the largest amphibious invasion of the Pacific War, even bigger than D-Day. 1,500 U.S. ships carried 500,000 troops. Japan's goal wasn't victory. It was annihilation. If they could sink enough ships, destroy enough morale, maybe, just maybe, the Americans would hesitate to invade the mainland. To coordinate the assault, the Japanese organized 10 massive kamikaze waves, the Operation Kikusui raids, launched between April and June 1945. April 6, 1945, the first Kikusui strike begins. 355 kamikaze planes take off from Kyushu, escorted by fighters. Below them, 1,300 kilometers of open sea, and the American fleet, waiting off Okinawa. Radar picks up the swarm. Alarms blare across the task forces. Gun crews man their stations, eyes scanning the horizon. Then the sky turns white with smoke trails. Dive bombers and Zero fighters plunge toward the ships, engines screaming. U.S. destroyers fire everything they have: 5-inch guns, 40-millimeter cannons, machine guns, but there are too many. The first hit strikes the USS Bush, blowing her apart. Then USS Colhoun, USS Halligan, and others. By nightfall, 7 ships are sunk and more than 20 heavily damaged. Hundreds of sailors are dead. The sea burns with oil and fire. For the kamikaze pilots, these were not acts of madness, but obedience. They believed they were saving Japan. Most were between 17 and 22 years old. Few had more than 40 hours of flight training. Letters recovered later reveal the conflict in their hearts. Mother, I go now to die for my country. Do not weep. I am proud to be a shield for Japan. One pilot wrote to his fiancée, "When you see the sunrise, remember, I became part of that light." In their final moments, they flew through storms of anti-aircraft fire, knowing death was certain, hoping only that their sacrifice meant something. For U.S. sailors, Okinawa was pure horror. Every day brought new attacks. The sky never felt safe. Ships were on constant alert, gun crews sleeping beside their weapons. One survivor from the USS Laffey remembered, "They came at us from all sides, above, below, even from the clouds. You could see the pilot's face before he hit." During one 80-minute period, the Laffy endured 22 separate kamikaze attacks and survived. But over 400 American ships would be hit before Okinawa was over. 36 were sunk. Nearly 5,000 sailors lost their lives. As the air assaults raged, Japan made one last gamble, sending its largest battleship, the Yamato, on a suicide mission. Operation Tengo was to coordinate with the Kikusui raids. Yamato would beach herself on Okinawa and serve as a massive gun platform. She never made it. U.S. carrier planes sank her on April 7th, just a day after the first Kikusui wave. From the skies to the sea, Japan's final forces were falling together, piece by piece. The kamikaze waves continued, 10 major attacks between April and June. By May, Japan had launched over 1,500 kamikaze aircraft, along with hundreds of conventional bombers and Oka-Baka rocket planes, piloted human missiles launched from bombers. The Americans adapted, radar pickets, stronger anti-aircraft defenses, and combat air patrols. Still, the losses mounted. The USS Bunker Hill was hit by 2 kamikazes on May 11th, killing 393 crewmen in minutes. The USS Enterprise, America's most decorated carrier, was struck for the final time and put out of action. Every day the cost in lives rose higher, on both sides. The last Kikusui attack came on June 21, 1945. Japan's airfields were nearly destroyed. Fuel and planes were scarce. Still, 50 young pilots volunteered for the final mission. They took off into gray skies and never returned. That same day, Okinawa fell. Operation Kikusui had failed to stop the invasion, but it had inflicted terrible losses. More than 1,800 kamikaze aircraft were destroyed. Over 7,000 U.S. Navy personnel killed or wounded, and an entire generation of Japanese youth was gone. After the war, many Japanese pilots who trained as kamikaze but never launched struggled with guilt and grief. Some questioned the morality of what they'd been asked to do. Others believed they had fulfilled their duty. Today, memorials in Japan, like the Chiren Peace Museum, honor the kamikaze as tragic figures, not heroes of war, but victims of desperation. Their letters, preserved behind glass, speak louder than propaganda ever did. Operation Kikusui was the final storm of Japan's empire, a storm made of human lives, burned into history forever. The young men who flew into that sky didn't win the war, but they changed how we understand it. They remind us that when war consumes hope, even sacrifice can become a weapon. And that's the legacy of Operation Kikusui, the storm that ended Japan's last defense.